Season 2. For most of modern history, global power followed three particular things: oil, military strength, and trade routes. But something is now quietly changing that equation. And what might that something be? Climate risk. Power used to be a lot easier to understand. You control energy, you control trade, and that gives you control of the territory itself. And that is precisely why countries with resources and infrastructure, they oftentimes dominated. But the system back then was relatively predictable. But as things stand today, climate risk changes all of the rules. How? Well, it disrupts energy systems. It destabilizes water supply. It affects food production. And it damages infrastructure. But most importantly, it makes it significantly harder to plan. And to no one's surprise, any and all modern conflicts revolve around these 5 protocols: energy, water, food, infrastructure, and eventually control. So, continuing with the tradition of embracing certain uncomfortable truths, here's the first one for you. Power is now shifting from resources to stability, as is blatantly obvious. Regions that are no longer stable cannot by any means be relied upon in the grander scheme of things, as is evident in today's day and age. And yet, countries that can maintain stable systems gain an advantage. Why? Well, stable energy, stable water, stable infrastructure. As a matter of fact, risk-based investments and geopolitical analysis increasingly factor climate stability into long-term strategic planning. So it turns out controlling oil is less useful if your infrastructure keeps flooding. Didn't think of that now, did you? So in this new reality that we are living in the year 2026, advantages on a geopolitical lens look drastically different, because preparation now becomes strategy and adaptation becomes power. So countries that can absorb shocks outperform those that cannot. Countries that are overtly dependent will now no longer have advantages that they've cherished for decades. And here is where things get really interesting. Some particularly resource-rich regions are highly exposed, and some resource-limited regions are now drastically more stable. This flips the script on traditional assumptions, risk assessments, and policy and geopolitical decisions. So let's switch gears and speak about uncomfortable truth number 2. The climate era will not be fair, as is obvious. Some countries will, of course, face higher exposure merely because of geography, and that is happening today. Small island states are now more susceptible to rising sea levels than most countries that are ginormous contributors to climate change that is leading to rising sea levels. Other countries have more capacity to adapt. So as things stand, you start to notice a shift in power balances all over the world. Countries that can adapt with the capacity to adapt will now start to have more of a presence, more of a say, more of an acknowledgement, as opposed to those that once did but now no longer do. This creates an unequal starting point for many countries all over the world. Countries that are doing everything that they possibly can to take all of the right steps towards tackling climate change, but their footprints are so minuscule that even if they were to go 100% all in, odds are that they would still be the very first to face the consequences of everyone else's actions. So energy has always shaped power, but energy systems are now shifting as well. Renewables are more distributed and are less locally and geographically tied to fossil fuels, which gives them the ability to not be concentrated in regions that then turn into hubs of influence, but more importantly so, hubs that are always going to be in the crosshairs at the first sign of conflict or disputes. Energy transition research highlights decentralization trends in renewable systems are an eventuality. This changes who gets to produce power, and it also changes how. So the control is shifting, and it's shifting through supply chains, critical materials, manufacturing hubs, logistics stability are all factors that are directly influencing control. But here's something that is oftentimes lesser acknowledged. Climate disruptions reshape all of these, which brings me to uncomfortable truth number 3. Power may become harder to see as time progresses. And what do I mean by that? Well, it will not always look like military strength. It'll look like soft influence. It'll look more like stability, reliable systems, predictable environments. The new scarce in today's day and age is not the presence of resources or materials. It's the presence of stability. And worst case yet, stability is not equally distributed. Not anymore. So if you must take anything away from this video, let it be this. The next era of global power may not be defined by who has more resources, but instead it may be defined by who can maintain stability. Because stable economies, stable systems, stable environments all contribute towards global influence. And that shift is already happening. If this changed how you look at global power, subscribe. There's a lot happening all over the world, and we do realize that everything that we've been touching base on has bigger implications. And this channel helps you understand the core context of all of those implications. So if you haven't already, check out a bunch of the other videos. It really helps the channel grow. And this is season 2. Things are only gonna get ramped up from here on onwards. We established a solid foundation, and now we move ahead.